He dumped me at our daughter's graduation. I handed him an envelope. I've decided to start a new life without you. Those were the words my husband of 28 years used to replace a toast at our daughter's graduation party. It wasn't whispered in shame or confessed with tears in a quiet corner. It was announced like a prize, standing at the head of a long table in one of Augusta's most expensive restaurants. Champagne glass still raised, smile fixed like a mask. The chatter stopped mid-laugh. Forks froze mid-air. 50 pairs of eyes swung from Gregory to me, waiting for the scene they thought would follow, screaming, tears. Maybe me storming out humiliated. That's what he'd counted on. Gregory always liked a performance, and in his mind, I was the supporting actress meant to crumble on cue. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, a small, deliberate smile that felt like a blade in my mouth. "Congratulations on your honesty," I said. My voice didn't shake. I reached into my handbag, pulled out a cream-colored envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, and placed it gently beside his plate. "What's this?" he asked, thrown off, his rehearsed lines snagging like fabric on barbed wire. "Something for you to read later." I kissed Amelia on the cheek, my brilliant daughter, cap still perched on her head, her face pale with shock, and whispered, "I am so proud of you. Today is still about you." Then I smoothed my dress, turned to the stunned room, and said, "Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." And I walked out. The heavy oak door shut behind me with a finality I welcomed. Outside, the August heat hit me like a wall, hot and raw and alive. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Behind me, I heard the door slam open and Gregory's voice, suddenly frantic, not triumphant. "Bianca! What the hell is this? What have you done?" I didn't turn. I let his panic follow me like smoke as I walked to my car. For months, I had played my role, the devoted wife, the careful planner, the quiet accountant of his chaos. But the envelope he held contained the truth of who I really was. What Gregory didn't know, and what nobody in that room suspected, was that I had been preparing for this exact moment. I had been watching the man I once trusted unravel himself, thread by thread, while I built a net he would never see coming. He thought humiliating me in public would leave me weak, scrambling. But humiliation is only power if the other person cares about your approval. Gregory had forgotten. I'd long stopped caring about his. So as the door of the restaurant slammed again and the whispers began behind glass, I allowed myself the smallest smile. The envelope wasn't just paper. It was the opening move of a plan I had been quietly weaving in the shadows of our marriage. And this time, I was 3 steps ahead. 3 months before that restaurant scene, I noticed the first crack. It wasn't lipstick on a collar or perfume on his shirt. Gregory was never that careless. It was numbers. Small, seemingly harmless transfers slipping out of our joint account. $800 here, $1,200 there. Most people wouldn't have blinked, but I had managed our family finances for almost 3 decades. I could tell you the exact week a grocery bill ran higher or when the power company had nudged up their rates. Money spoke to me like a language, and these transfers were lies whispered between the lines. I didn't confront him, not right away. Instead, I studied. I logged every withdrawal, traced the accounts, followed the trail. It led to dinners at expensive restaurants, jewelry invoices, and most damning of all, emails about beachfront properties in Savannah. My husband, the man who told me we had to tighten our belts for retirement, was quietly auditioning for a new life without me. And then I saw the text. He'd left his phone unlocked one evening while showering, Cassandra Wells. A woman I had welcomed into our home at Christmas parties. A woman who once called me for career advice, her name glowing on the screen with hearts beside it. Their messages weren't fumbling or new. They were practiced, intimate, talking about our apartment and the day after Amelia's graduation. That's when I realized Gregory wasn't just leaving me. He wanted to script it like a play. He would humiliate me at the very moment I was meant to be proudest, our daughter's milestone, and walk out as though he were the hero, the man who had finally chosen himself. But here's what Gregory never understood. While he was plotting in broad strokes, I was working in details. The prenup, that dusty document from nearly 30 years ago, when my family money outweighed his and he wanted protection. Ironically, it was his idea. He thought he was clever, securing his future against a wife who might one day betray him. He never considered that he might be the one caught in its web. I dug it out of our files, sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, and read it line by line. There it was, Section 12, the fidelity clause, still binding, still enforceable, no expiration. Any act of infidelity transferred the majority of assets to the betrayed spouse. He hadn't even remembered. Or maybe he assumed I had. I hired an attorney quietly. I gathered evidence, bank transfers, screenshots of texts, property inquiries. I built a file that would have made any prosecutor proud. Every page told the story of a man who believed himself untouchable while his wife sharpened her knives in silence. And here's the part that made people gasp when I finally shared it. I could have confronted him the moment I found out. I could have screamed, thrown him out, demanded answers. But I didn't, because my daughter was in her final semester of college. She was working nights at an internship, studying until dawn, preparing for the day that was meant to be hers. I refused to let Gregory steal that from her. So I smiled through dinners. I laughed at his stories. I packed lunches for Amelia when she came home on weekends. And all the while, I was building the trap he wouldn't see until it was too late. Ask yourself, What would you have done? If the person you trusted most was betraying you, would you explode and burn it all down instantly? Or would you wait, bide your time, and let them walk into a ruin of their own making? I chose patience. I chose silence. Because I knew that when the day came, Gregory's own arrogance would hand me the stage. And when he lifted that champagne glass in front of 50 people, ready to humiliate me, I was already holding the knife. When I left that restaurant, I didn't go home right away. I drove slowly, the Augusta sun bleeding across the windshield, and parked a few blocks away from our colonial house. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my heart was pounding in a strange rhythm. Not fear, not regret, but the kind of adrenaline you feel right before a long-awaited verdict. Gregory thought that envelope was a love letter to heartbreak, but it wasn't. It was a dossier of his own destruction. Inside were 3 things: the divorce filing, notarized, and time-stamped, a stack of bank statements and transfers that mapped his deceit in black and white, and finally, a copy of the prenup with Section 12 highlighted in yellow. Fidelity clause. Still binding, still lethal. By the time I walked into the house, the familiar tick of my father's old grandfather clock greeted me, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Upstairs, Gregory's suitcases were already tucked behind clothes in the closet, half-packed for his dramatic exit. It almost made me laugh. He'd been so careful folding shirts, polishing shoes, but careless with the one detail that mattered: me. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing friends from the restaurant, Amelia, even Gregory's sister Diana. Messages stacked like dominoes. I answered only one, Amelia's. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I texted back. "Enjoy your day. This isn't your burden." That was the truth. My daughter's graduation was supposed to be her celebration, not the stage for her father's betrayal. He thought I'd break down and make it messy. Instead, I'd given her what she deserved, a mother who refused to fall apart. Hours later, the front door slammed open. Gregory stormed in, his face crimson, envelope clutched in his hand like it had bitten him. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "You served me with divorce papers today of all days?" I closed my laptop, calm. "I thought it aligned nicely with your plans. You wanted to start your new life. I'm simply helping you transition." His face twisted, the smugness returning like a mask he couldn't live without. "The prenup expired years ago. Any lawyer will tell you that I let myself smile then. A small, sharp thing. Actually, it didn't. Section 12 is still in effect. Fidelity clause remains for the duration of the marriage. Did your lawyer explain that?" "Oh, wait." I tilted my head. "You didn't consult one, did you?" The color drained from his face. That was the moment he realized the house of glass he'd built with Cassandra wasn't a palace. It was a cage, and I held the key. He sank onto the couch, sputtering. "You can't do this to me." I studied him, the man who once held my hand through miscarriages. The man who used to surprise me with flowers for no reason. The man I thought I knew. "I'm not doing this to you, Gregory. You did this. You just didn't think I'd fight back." Silence stretched. Then he muttered, "You've always been calculating, Bianca. But this is cold." I stood, gathering the overnight bag I'd packed weeks ago. "No, Gregory. This is survival." And as I walked out of the door to stay at Diana's, I didn't look back. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one holding our marriage together with both hands. He was left alone with an envelope and the wreckage of his own design. Diana's house smelled of rosemary and old books, the way it always did. She hugged me so fiercely when I arrived that my resolve almost cracked. Almost. She poured 2 glasses of wine and listened while I explained everything. The prenup, the transfers, Cassandra. Her face darkened. My brother always had a flair for drama, but this? Public betrayal at his daughter's graduation? He's lost his mind. We hadn't even finished our first glass before Amelia showed up, still in her graduation dress, makeup smudged from crying. She fell into my arms like a little girl again, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" Because I wanted her to finish her final semester without carrying her father's sins. Because no child should sit through exams while imagining her parents' marriage in flames. But how could I explain all of that in one breath? "I didn't want to ruin this day for you," I told her softly. "You worked too hard for it." Her tears burned into my shoulder. "Dad ruined it anyway." Diana sat across from us, lips pressed tight, a silent ally. Then my phone buzzed again. Philip, my attorney. "Accounts frozen. Emergency filing approved." I showed Diana and Amelia. Amelia's jaw set. "Good. He deserves it." But it was too soon to save her. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Diana answered, then came back with a troubled look. "It's Gregory. And Cassandra." He stormed in first, Cassandra trailing behind with the nerves of someone who knew she was on stage. His voice was already raised. "Bianca, you need to stop this insanity. Unfreeze the accounts. We can discuss this like reasonable adults." Amelia stepped forward before I could open my mouth. "Maybe you should have tried being reasonable before humiliating Mom on my graduation day." Gregory blinked, as if seeing his daughter for the first time. "Amelia, this doesn't involve you." "Doesn't involve me?" Her voice cracked like a whip. "You blew up our family at my celebration. You stole money while I was working 2 jobs to pay for my textbooks because you said money was tight. And you did it all while smiling in my face." Gregory's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Cassandra touched his arm, whispering, "Greg, maybe we should go." For the first time that day, he looked small. like the emperor stripped of his clothes, standing there with nothing but his arrogance. Diana crossed her arms. I think you've upset Amelia enough. You should leave. Gregory tried once more, his voice breaking. This isn't over, Bianca. I'll fight you on this. I met his gaze without blinking. Then fight. But you'll be fighting me on ground I already prepared. He left with Cassandra, but the echo of Amelia's words stayed behind. My daughter, the girl who once clutched stuffed animals to sleep, had just stared her father down and called him what he was. And in that moment, I realized the family had chosen sides. Not because of loyalty, but because truth has a way of making liars look smaller than their shadows. The preliminary hearing was set for a rainy Tuesday morning. The courthouse smelled of damp wool coats and stale coffee, the kind of place where futures are quietly dismantled with the stroke of a pen. I walked in with Philip, my attorney, every document neatly organized, every page a silent weapon. Gregory arrived minutes later, dragging behind a young lawyer who looked like he'd been pulled straight from a corporate firm sharp suit, expensive tie, but the wrong battlefield. The judge, a woman with hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes like steel, wasted no time. She flipped through the prenup, pages whispering like knives. This document appears valid, she said. Do you contest its enforceability? Gregory's lawyer cleared his throat, voice trembling. Your Honor, given the time elapsed, we believe the agreement expired. The judge didn't even let him finish. Section 18. Duration of the marriage plus any proceedings resulting from its dissolution. There is no expiration. She turned a page, her eyes sharp as they skimmed the highlighted section. And Section 12, the fidelity clause. Mr. Caldwell, did you sign this agreement? Gregory's face flushed red. Yes, but then it stands. The gavel didn't even need to fall. In that moment, years of arrogance cracked. The accounts would remain frozen. The house remained mine. His personal account, the one he'd been so careful to hide, was now his lifeline and Cassandra's too. I glanced sideways at him. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, whispering frantically to his lawyer, who only shook his head. The judge looked back down at the file. We will reconvene in 30 days for full financial discovery. She raised her eyes, drilling into Gregory. Until then, Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you reacquaint yourself with the commitments you signed. Court adjourned. As we filed out, Gregory rushed to catch up, desperation clinging to him like sweat. Bianca, please, we need to talk. 28 years together has to count for something I stopped. Turned to him, and for the first time in months, let the ice inside me surface. It did count, Gregory. Until you decided it didn't, I walked away, leaving him alone in the courthouse corridor, surrounded by echoes of what he thought he could control. That was the moment he realized the courtroom wasn't his stage. It was his reckoning. News spreads fast in Augusta. By the time I got home from court, my phone was already buzzing with texts, some from friends offering support, others hungry for gossip. I answered none of them. Silence was my armor and dignity my weapon. Gregory, on the other hand, couldn't hide. His carefully built image of successful businessman and devoted family man began to crumble under the weight of whispers. People had seen him storm out of the courthouse, his face pale, Cassandra trailing behind with her lips pressed tight. Rumors filled the gaps he couldn't control. 2 weeks later, Diana called me, amusement crackling in her voice. Have you heard? Cassandra moved out. I wasn't surprised, but the speed impressed me. Already? Apparently, she found out Gregory's fortune isn't what he promised. The beachfront property deal collapsed, the car deposit gone. She told a friend she didn't sign up for a man with financial problems. I almost laughed. The man who once accused me of being cold and calculating had chosen a partner who loved him only as long as the checks cleared. Karma has an exquisite sense of timing. Meanwhile, I was quietly rebuilding. Separate accounts. I'd maintained over the years. Money Gregory never touched gave me breathing room. I rented a small office downtown, bare walls and secondhand furniture, and started the financial consultancy I'd dreamed of for decades. My first clients were 2 women in the middle of divorces, eyes wide with fear at bank statements they couldn't decode. I helped them understand, helped them fight back. Word spread. One night, Amelia called from Charleston, where she'd just started her first job. I'm so proud of you, Mom, she said, her voice bubbling through the receiver. You're helping women the way no one helped you. I smiled, staring out my office window at the rain. I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me sooner. While I was stepping into a new life, Gregory was sinking into his own lies. Without my guidance, his business faltered. Cassandra was gone. Even his drinking buddies at the country club stopped returning his calls. He was learning the hard way that when your world is built on illusions, it only takes one gust of truth to knock it all down. And yet, I knew him well enough to sense he wasn't finished. Men like Gregory don't surrender. They cling to whatever scraps of control remain, even if it means burning everything around them. The final hearing loomed like a storm on the horizon. And this time, he'd have no illusions left to hide behind. The date was almost cruel in its irony. Our final divorce hearing fell on what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. For nearly 3 decades, I had marked this day with flowers, dinners, and quiet gratitude for a life I thought was built on partnership. Now, I walked into the courthouse knowing it would end with a gavel instead of a kiss. Gregory looked haggard when he arrived. His once tailored suits now hung loose, his skin gray from sleepless nights. Cassandra was long gone, already spotted on the arm of a Savannah real estate developer who didn't come with frozen bank accounts. Gregory's swagger had vanished. He moved like a man carrying chains only he had forged. The judge, sharp-eyed and efficient, wasted little time. She reviewed the prenup one last time, then spoke with a calm authority that cut through the room like glass. The fidelity clause stands. The evidence of financial diversion is clear. Mrs. Caldwell retains possession of the family home, 70% of joint investments, and her retirement accounts. Mr. Caldwell retains his business, his personal account, and any property acquired independently. Gregory's attorney, older this time, seasoned, tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. This court upholds the agreement as written and signed. Case closed. The gavel struck, final and absolute. For me, it was liberation. For Gregory, it was devastation. He slumped in his chair as though the air had left the room. The man who once raised champagne glasses to toast his own success now looked like a ghost wandering through ruins. Outside the courtroom, he stopped me. His voice was low, stripped of arrogance. Bianca, I made a terrible mistake. Is there any chance we could— No, I said, gentle but firm. That door is closed. For a moment, I thought he might argue. Instead, he nodded, eyes glassy, and whispered, You deserve happiness. Perhaps the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. I walked out into the bright Augusta sun, divorce papers in hand. The anniversary I thought would mark endurance now marked freedom. And for the first time in almost 30 years, I wasn't Gregory's wife. I was simply Bianca. And that felt like power. 6 months later, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me in the mirror. The tired housewife who had once lived for Gregory's approval was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, lighter, and entirely her own. My consultancy, Caldwell Financial Transitions, was thriving. What started in a bare office with borrowed furniture had grown into a full practice. I'd hired 2 associates, both women who had endured their own divorces and knew what it meant to claw their way back from financial ruins. Together, we became lifelines for women who walked into our office with trembling hands and walked out with plans, power, and hope. Amelia visited often, her career blossoming in Charleston. One afternoon, she leaned across my desk, pride shining in her eyes. You know what's ironic, Mom? If Dad had just been honest, he might have kept half of everything. I smiled faintly. Sometimes people can't see past what they want in the moment. He wanted freedom, but he never understood the cost. What I had gained was far greater than money. I had gained myself. No longer defined as Gregory's wife or Amelia's mother, I became Bianca mentor, business owner, advocate. Women called me late at night, panicked about bills, about court, about futures they couldn't imagine. I guided them step by step, just as I wish someone had guided me. There were lonely nights, of course. Divorce leaves shadows even when it frees you. I sometimes lay awake remembering our 10th anniversary in Charleston, when Gregory surprised me with a weekend getaway. For years, I believed moments like that proved his love. Now I realize they were simply gestures, bright ribbons tied over cracks I refused to see. But those cracks had taught me something essential. Strength isn't born in comfort. It's forged in betrayal, in the quiet decision to rise when no one else is lifting you. The envelope I'd slid across the table on Amelia's graduation day hadn't just ended a marriage. It had opened a door I never knew existed. Behind it, I discovered a new life. Not defined by revenge, but by reinvention. And yet, even as I built this new future, one question lingered like an echo. When trust has been shattered so completely, can you ever let someone close again? I thought the end of my marriage would feel like a final chapter, a door slamming shut. But the truth? It feels more like standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. Freedom is exhilarating, yes, but it's also terrifying. Some nights, I still catch myself reaching for the other side of the bed, expecting Gregory's weight beside me. Old habits linger like ghosts. Other nights, I dream about Cassandra's smirk across the restaurant, and I wake with my jaw clenched, my nails digging into my palms. But then I walk into my office, see a woman clutching her divorce papers with the same trembling hands I once had. And I know this is where I'm meant to be, helping others turn pain into power, building something honest from the rubble of lies. And yet, a question gnaws at me, one I can't quite silence. After betrayal this deep, can love ever feel safe again? I don't know the answer. Maybe I never will. What I do know is this. Sometimes the most radical act of survival is choosing yourself. So I'll leave you with this. If the person you built your life around shattered your trust in front of everyone you loved, would you ever risk giving someone else the power to break you again? Because me? I'm still deciding. If you've made it this far, let me ask you directly. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have walked out quietly or burned everything down the way I did? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Don't hold back. If you find yourself drawn to stories of betrayal, survival, and reinvention, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. There are more stories waiting, stories that will make you question what you do when loyalty collides with deception. Thank you for staying with me until the end. These aren't just stories, they're confessions, and sometimes confessions are heavier than secrets. Until next time.